We are live on Proline TV for some more college football coverage, part of the Our Football Network. Greg DePalma here with Marty Lee as we talk some Penn State football. Huge game coming up, even though it's been a very disappointing season to say the least for Nittany Lion fans, Marty. The fact of the matter is this is Ohio State. And no matter what type of – and your season can't be that bad at Penn State that you can't feel that when this game comes around that it won't mean something. That even though we're dogs, hey, this is still Penn State, and we got a shot. And that's going to be the mindset. And let's see if we can go off and pull off an upset and do something that nobody expects us to do. So how's it going, Marty?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I think you know it. That's the mindset you need to have for your Penn State. It's go in there. It's backs against the wall. It's, prove the entire world wrong, which is crazy to say because, coming into the year, right, this was a game that people all across college football, whether you're a fan of Penn State, Ohio State, the Big Ten, what it was, you had this circled as, this is for the better part of a decade, one of the best games of the year every year in college football. They oftentimes, have not gone in Penn State's favor, but there's been no denying that these teams just continue to play close, hard-fought games that go down as one of the games of the year every year in college football. And now here we are, right, 3 days from kicking. Ohio State's, a 20.5-point favorite, I think it was last time I looked. They always were going to be favored in the horseshoe, even if both these teams were 7-0, as many people, myself included, had anticipated. But no one expected this. And, the wheels have completely fallen off for Penn State at this point, of course. You mentioned – even with everything going on, how you don't feel a certain way about this game. And it's kind of crazy because I think speaking for Penn State fans, I'm sure, and I would hope the players feel much differently, but I think for fans, it's almost like to an extent, you've forgotten that it's Ohio State week, which is crazy because this is the biggest week of the year. It has been every season for so long because you're just so wrapped up in this point between coaching search and what you want to see from young guys on this roster, who on this roster is even going to still be here next year. This season's been a miserable one for Penn State. There's no way around it. And it's crazy because they were literally one play away from beating Oregon and potentially being the number one team in the country. And here we are a month later where we are. But yeah, if you can come out and pull off an upset that no one sees coming on Saturday, that really – it doesn't right the wrongs. It doesn't fix the season or anything, but hey, that would be nice to see at least.
Before we dive headfirst into the game, let's talk about the other important news that is taking up a lot of the fans' time and effort. When you go online now, basically as a fan, the one thing you're not doing is, what do I have to find out about how we can beat Ohio State this week? It's who's going to be the next head coach at Penn State, and where can I get where can I find out anything and everything about the head coaching search? So what's the latest? And I guess we'll start off with, the first question being in that would be, has any name at all trumped other names as far as the leading candidate for the job?
Yeah, man, I think when the job first opened up, for a lot of reasons we discussed on here when we were doing our show the day James Franklin was fired, Matt Rhule was always going to be one of the first names mentioned. He's a letterman. He's from State College. The relationship with Pat Kraft, I know that's one that, probably to people outside the Penn State world, there's not nearly the support for that you would think in Penn State circles. I feel confident in saying the majority of the fan base wants absolutely nothing to do with Matt Rhule. I don't think it's going to be Rhule. There was a point in time where I probably did think it was going to be Rhule. By all accounts, Pat Kraft is looking to, quote unquote, swing big here. There's also been some rumblings in recent days of Matt Rhule potentially being close to an extension with Nebraska. Obviously, I think if he does sign an extension with Nebraska, that tells you all you need to know. Sure. That he knows he's not getting the Penn State job. But until Rhule signs an extension with Nebraska, I think you've got to include him in this. But I think if you're a Penn State fan also, if Matt Rhule does sign an extension with Nebraska, you've got to feel good because you're as Penn State, where you probably could get Matt Rule in a heartbeat if you wanted, and he's your fallback, he's your backup. He's not signing that extension if all parties involved aren't under the impression Penn State feels like they're going to land one of their top targets, right? So, I mean, excuse me, I'm not sure where this is going to end. Eli Drinkowitz is a name that I've seen mentioned a lot. From my understanding, there's a lot of mutual interest there. I think that would be a tremendous hire for Penn State. Yep. I mean, I know he's had some struggles in Missouri against upper competition, but it's at Missouri. At Penn State, he's going to have a much different roster.
That's
right?
what happens.
Yes,
you can coach the team up to that level. Yes. But then once you have to play those really elite teams like a Penn State, where they're more than likely going to be, then it's about talent, and he just doesn't have the talent.
Yeah, and I mean, you can look there. Other than when Gary Pinkel won those back-to-back SEC East titles, this has probably been the best 2 or 3 year stretch in the history of Missouri football, right? Yeah. He's been tremendous. I think Drinkowitz would be an absolute home run of a hire. I think one thing I'd like about Drinkowitz as well, was any offensive mind, is if it's a guy who can bring in their own offense and you can leave Jim Knowles in place with that defense, you're going to feel pretty good. Because at Penn State in recent years, what's your offensive identity, right? If you can find an offensive coach that fixes that issue. Outside of Drinkowitz, we've all seen the reports, Marcus Freeman being tied to the job. I don't think it's going to.
I don't believe that
at all. Do I think Pat Kraft reached out to Marcus Freeman? Absolutely. Do I think Marcus Freeman's leaving Notre Dame if it's not for the NFL? Absolutely not. But again, it just shows it's that big swing, right? We've seen some smoke with Mike Elko, which that's one I think maybe has more validity. I mean, Elko's a guy from New Jersey. He has some connections with Pat Kraft. I think culturally he's a better fit at Penn State than he is at Texas A&M. That said, Texas A&M looks like they could potentially win a national championship this year. And if you're Penn State, do you really want to wait out on someone who might be playing deep into January? That's the thing, right? And that's where if I had to place a bet right now, since I'm saying this, it won't happen because we know these things work, I would bet money on Drinkowitz just because I think if you look at some of these top guys they've identified, Drinkowitz is the one who's not going to be in the playoff, especially now with Bo Pribula hurt. I mean, before Pribula got hurt, Missouri probably beats Vanderbilt if Pribula doesn't get hurt, and they're ranked in the top 10 right now, taking dead aim in a playoff berth, which again just speaks volumes of the coach Eli Drinkowitz is. But I think with Drinkowitz, if I had to make a guess, I think he ends up with it because he meets what Penn State's looking, Power 4 experience, has his own offensive identity. You're not going to have to wait till after the playoff to hire him. You could probably get him in here around Thanksgiving, shortly thereafter, to make some effort at salvaging your 26 recruiting class, getting a jump start on the portal, all of those sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, another name I'll throw out there that I'm very intrigued by, and I don't know. I know for a fact that Penn State has at least kicked the tires there, is Brian Hartline, offensive coordinator at Ohio State. I think if you're Penn State, you look at Hartline for the last 10 years, you've wanted to be Ohio State, right? So if you have a chance to hire the offensive coordinator, the kind of the leader of that recruiting juggernaut in Columbus, why not, right? And I think Hartline would be one of those hires with some major. My dog's going bonkers in the background, so I apologize.
Is he trying to get in or out?
I'm not sure what he's doing. He came running down the basement steps and decided to cut some laps down here, so I'm not quite sure what he's up to. But I apologize if you hear the scratch. Okay. But no, I mean, Hartline, so that's a boom or bust hire, but I think there's some serious boom potential. Again, I personally think it ends up being Drinkowitz.
Okay,
if Drinkowitz is a name, Hartline's a name. If A&M somehow suffers 2 losses and misses the playoffs, I would keep.
Well, then in that case, though, that wouldn't be a good thing if that were to happen.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's weird if you're Penn State fan, because it's like, hey, I want these guys to do well and to come to Penn State and do well. But you know what? If you don't do as well right now, I might be able to get you this job in a few weeks.
If you can't win the big games there at Texas A&M, you're not going to do it here. So, yeah.
But that's where it's a bit of a catch-22. But if I had to take a guess, and we know these things go, look how many times it's the coach who you heard nothing about, and then the 11th hour, Pete Thamel, whoever it is, tweets out, so-and-so is being targeted. I mean, Brian Kelly, using him as examples, that's how he was when LSU hired him, right? Like, no one expected Brian Kelly, and then out of nowhere, there he is. So a lot of times we see that happen. But with the names that have been connected to the job, guys I know Penn State has talked to, has interest in, that interest has been reciprocated. If I had to guess, I'd say Drinkowitz But again, there's probably still at least a month to go in this, because I'm assuming whoever the coach is not going to leave their team at least till the regular season's over.
Sure.
Maybe again, a guy like Drinkwitz of Missouri, when Missouri takes that third loss and they're officially out of the playoff, if he's going to make a jump, maybe he makes that jump sooner, especially under the assumption that a lot of those kids in Missouri are probably going to come with him anyway. But yeah, you're probably not going to see a hiring until probably, the Sunday.
Which is actually not bad. I mean, if they can bring Matt Hardy over, that would be pretty nice.
And one thing too, again, if it would be Drinkaway, not to put the cart ahead of the horse here, but a name Penn State fans are going to recognize is Matt Zollers, the quarterback who came in for Pabiola on Saturday. Zollers was a 5-star recruit out of Eastern PA, and it came down to Penn State and Missouri.
Yeah, I remember. I was thinking about that name was very familiar to me when I saw him last week.
The main reason he chose Missouri was he wanted to play for Drinkowitz and play in that offensive system. So, in theory, you think you're pretty set a quarterback for the next few years as well in a situation like that. So, and then there's another 4-star kid, Gavin Sidewar, quarterback from LaSalle College High School in Philadelphia, is currently committed to Missouri. So, you feel like you're probably in pretty good spot at quarterback there too, if that happened to shake out that way.
Well, what did happen there? Because, is he, we know you guys have talked pretty highly about Grunkemeyer. So is there a definite talent difference between those two? Meaning they would be, hey, you don't know, put them together. They have a camp battle. Maybe you do it in the spring, and therefore whoever loses it transfers out somewhere else. Or do you think if Zollers were to come in, that he would definitely be the guy?
I mean, I think they're very different quarterbacks. I think that's a big thing. I think Zollers is much more of your traditional dual threat kind of player. Again, let's say if it would be Drinkowitz, if Zoller comes in, I'm going to assume Zollers is the starter because he's going to know the system. He's going to be ingrained in all that sort of thing. And that's not so much a knock on Grunkemeyer or anyone else. I also think there's a pretty good shot that, James Franklin's got, if James Franklin wants to land on his feet as a powerful head coach, he will.
Yeah.
There's a good shot Grunkemeyer just goes with him.
Especially if Zoller comes over with Drinkwitz.
Exactly. And especially, with Franklin, if it's somewhere closer, I've seen some smoke with Virginia Tech, and like if it'd be a school like that, I would assume a lot of guys are going to make that jump with him. But I think with the Grunkemeyer v. Zollers thing, if it would come to that, again, I think Zollers is a much different player. He's much more of a dual threat guy, and he fits that system well. Like I said, big reason why I picked Missouri was he wanted to go play with Drinkowitz and play in that system.
Okay, so otherwise, I know that's what you're saying. Before we wrap this up and then turn our attention to the Ohio State game, is that basically what a lot of the fan base is hearing as well? Are the fans kind of still unsure for the most part? Are they still worried about Matt Rule? If you had to put like a percentage, where would it be regarding how the general fan base feels about the situation right now?
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, what I've read, interacting with people, talking to people, I think a lot of people would be pretty happy with Drinkowitz. A lot of people would be happy with Hartline if it would go that direction.
Do you think that's what it's against right now? Do you think it's Drinkwitz, Hartline, or like the short list of candidates right now?
They're the two names that, again, that have come up the most. Of the names that come up the most often, they're the two that in my mind are the most realistic. Okay. I know Penn State is very interested in Mike Elko, and Elko seems to and I know this has been reported. I think Famil had, I think some of the Athletic had it, that, there's some mutual smoke there between Penn State and Elko. But again, with what Elko has going on at Texas A&M, and I understand people too, like, A&M to Penn State, maybe it's a lateral. It might be a lateral move, but if you're a Northeastern guy, where just if nothing else culturally, you might be a better fit. And one thing too that I think is something to keep in mind here with this coaching search as it goes on, especially when you take Penn State and compare it to LSU and Florida, because they're the three big ones right now, right? I would argue, I put LSU in a bit of a pedestal because I personally argue LSU is the single best job in all of college football. But if you want to compare it to Florida and even to an extent to LSU, in what conference are you more likely to go 10-2 every year and make the playoffs?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's the Big Ten, right? Yeah. And the Big Ten might be more top-heavy than the SEC, but it does not have – the Big Ten doesn't have a Missouri, doesn't have a Vanderbilt, a South Carolina, a Tennessee, those like 6 through 10 schools that legitimately can beat you any weekend, right?
Mississippi State.
Yeah. Mississippi State might be the most impressive winless conference team I've ever seen. right? So the Big Ten, after that top 4 or 5, really goes off a cliff. So I think that's a factor here too with coaches, not just coaches who may currently be in the SEC, but coaches who may have that mutual interest between Penn State and LSU, but especially Penn State and Florida, is the path to the college football playoff in the Big Ten is not nearly as challenging as it is in the SEC. And again, I put LSU on a different pedestal. I'd argue LSU is the single best job in college football. I mean, before Brian Kelly, what was it? 3 straight head coaches who won a national title there, and 2 of those coaches were Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, so they didn't win it because of the coaching. I think that's a factor too. Is the path to the playoff in the Big Ten is always going to be easier than the path to the playoff in the SEC.
Okay, and no reservations on Penn State's behalf regarding your belief that Hartline didn't have any head coaching experience.
I think that may be a bit of a. I don't want to say the.
This is a big job.
Yeah, I think that's what their preference would be to pluck a sitting Power 4 coach. I have no doubts about that.
You think he's like a kind of a backup?
But I think if you don't get any of your top 2 or 3 guys, I think let's put it this way: if they go the coordinator route, I think Hartline is their clear cut number 1.
Okay.
I think he's the clear cut number 1 in their books if they go the coordinator route. And I think part of it too is a lot of people that Pat Kraft respects very highly and that people within the Penn State program respect very highly have had a lot of good things to say about Hartline. So I think that's a big factor as well.
Yeah. And with all these jobs popping up, it would be pretty surprising if Brian Hartline can't find a job.
Yeah. If he doesn't find a job, that tells me he's content being the OC at his alma mater until the absolute perfect job comes along.
And he might be looking at it because nobody knows whether or not, I mean, Ryan Day, is he going to be there for 10 more years? Is he a lifer?
There's been Ryan Day, the NFL smoke in the past.
That's
who knows if one of these years Day finally decides to make that jump.
Yes.
Hartline, I'm sure it would be similar to when Urban moved along and they just handed the keys to Day.
That'd be perfect.
And kept the machine rolling, right?
Yes.
That's probably.
Give him enough money. Say, just, be patient. Might be a few years, but we want you to be the guy. Okay, so speaking of Ohio State, again, the spread is 21. I'm sure it's mixed a bunch of other places. 10-1 on the money line, which is absolutely insane to think of.
Yeah.
And if we look at it, though, here's the thing. So really what we want to do here with the time that we're going to have to break this game down is we want to find the route to a upset. I want to find out how Penn State can pull off an upset and why it would make sense. Like how, not some crazy theory, but how are there reasons why that we could see that that's possible? And a few things I noticed is that in the 4 losses for Penn State, they have lost all 4 by just 13 points. They've lost their last 2, of course, as every Penn State fan knows, by 1 point each. And this is a rivalry that, again, whether or not, and point spreads come into effect here as well. We're trying to find a path to a win, but just keep this in mind point spread wise, because it's a big number that while Ohio State has beaten Penn State 8 straight times, Penn State's covered 5 out of 8. And the Penn State dog spreads, the ones that were 15, 18, and 20, anything I think over 13, Penn State covered them all. So even a few years back when it was 20 and, things were sort of like they are here in a way, Penn State still covered. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, bye week to prepare. Don't care about Ohio State preparing because I just care about my own team. And I've got a week to, hey, let's just, it was like right into Iowa. So now let's take a week, let's get this thing going. And let's find a way to beat this team and stay competitive, because what they don't want to do too is, and I'm pretty sure, of course, that these players, I mean, this is what they may not really have. You can understand the motivation for Iowa. It was just things happen so quickly, but this isn't Illinois. This isn't, Maryland. This is Ohio State. And you got to believe that these kids are fired up to play this game. And we know there's a ton of talented kids on the sideline. So tell me how you think they can not only cover this game, but make this a 4-quarter football game.
I think it all starts with the defense. Obviously this is it's not exactly the same as the offense Jim Knowles has seen the last few years because Chip Kelly's no longer there. But ultimately, this is Ryan Day's offense, right? So I think Jim Knowles knows what he's prepping for. You're going to need to see a masterful defensive game plan from Jim Knowles and then execution from the defense, because that's been the biggest issue this year on defense is the lack of execution. You're going to need your defensive line to come out and play at a level that they have not played at since the Oregon game. I thought against Oregon, the defensive line, while they weren't great, played well. There were a lot of holdings that were not called. But you're going to need Denai Dennis Sutton to be what was expected of him coming into the year. You're going to need Zane Durant to be what was expected of him coming into the year. Chaz Coleman, the true freshman who some of you may have seen all week, popping up on midseason true freshman All-American teams. The kid from Ohio who just has superstar potential written all over him. You're going to need him to have a big game. You're going to need to stuff the Ohio State running game, and it starts with the defensive line, and you need to make Julian Sayin uncomfortable. Because if you give Julian Sayin time with these receivers don't necessarily need to get open to make plays. So you're going to, I think it starts with the defense, primarily the defensive line. You're going to need a better havoc rate than you've had. You need to shut down the run like you haven't all year, and you need to terrorize Julian Sayin. You need to hope that creates a turnover or two. I mean, this feels like a game where, and again, this is where it's so weird from Penn State, Ohio State of recent years, where you felt like if Penn State came out and played their A game, they could just straight up beat Ohio State. I mean, I know they haven't in a long time, but like you were just going, like it's always close, right? It's always close. I can only think of 2 times, I think, in the last 10 years that it was a double-digit game at the end, and both of those were games that were closer than the final score. But you don't feel that way this year. You feel like this is one where some fluky stuff's going to happen. You're going to have some turnovers, whatever it may be. So if you're going to get that again, it comes with a great defensive performance. It starts with that defensive line. And in the secondary, right, A.J. Harris coming into the year, you were a preseason All-American. There was talks of you being a first-round pick, being the first cornerback in school history to get drafted in the first round. You're going to be matched up in Jeremiah Smith Saturday. So it's time to come out and show that preseason hype wasn't just hype, right? That's if they're going to do it, that's where it's going to be, because I don't think there's a lot of reason for confidence or faith in this offense right now. If the path to a potential Penn State upset is like a 16-14 kind of game, low scoring, you drag them down into the mud, you shorten the game with Katron Allen, and your defense is causing havoc and forcing some turnovers and never allowing Julian Sayin to get comfortable.
Can he have do you think it would be wise to take a look at how Michigan beat them last year?
Yes, I think that's what you're going to need to do. Or, like Michigan did last year, or like you've seen Iowa do to teams times and times again in the last 20 years, just drag them down into the mud, shorten the game, force them to play your game, and that's where you give yourself a chance here.
All right. And what about Drunkenmeyer? So he's got the extra week, and it's extremely valuable for a young quarterback like this. So what kind of do you see the path that, even though it's only been a very short period of time, that he has the tools? Is there anything that you saw in the Iowa game that leads you to believe that with a full extra week to prepare, and what you've known from this kid since he's been here in a very short period of time, you've heard what you've heard, that there is a way to game plan him to come out and be efficient enough to run this offense?
Yeah, I think with Ethan Grunkemeyer, if you go back and watch the Iowa tape, I've rewatched it since the game, and Dylan and I talked about it on here on our post-game show that night. And there was a lot of growing pains, without a doubt. A lot of just not reading the defense well, not making quick enough decisions, but things you expect from a redshirt freshman in his first career starts, especially when that first career start was Kinnick night. I mean, this poor kid, his first 3 starts, Kinnick Stadium at night, the Horseshoe in number 2 Indiana. That's baptism.
A lot of growing up real quickly.
Yeah. But one thing I did like with Grunkemeyer, and Dylan and I discussed this, and this was for a long time, but one of the things I always felt like Drew Allen any better at, he wasn't afraid to try and force a ball into a window. He wasn't afraid to give his receivers a chance to make a play. Sometimes it burned them, There was an interception he threw where he tried to force the ball to Luke Reynolds. And honestly, Luke Reynolds should have caught, but he didn't. Bounced in the air, was picked off. But you know what? I will take the aggressive mistakes all day, especially from a young quarterback, especially in a season like this. If you think you can make a play, try and make the play, man. Don't be hesitant about it. That was one thing I really liked about him. So, I think if you're looking ahead to Saturday, you're probably going to use his legs some. And that's where it's kind of tough for Penn State, too, because I think Grunkemeyer is more of a dual. He's not a true dual threat guy, more of a dual threat guy than Drew Aller was. We saw that at times against Iowa. Maybe sometimes against Iowa, I think he was a little too quick to try and pull the ball down and use his legs. But your backup quarterback, Jackson Smollett, got hurt against Iowa and has had his hand in a cast for the last 2 weeks. So you're probably not going to have Smollett available. If Grunkemeyer goes down, you're looking at a walk-on going in at quarterback.
Yeah, it's
not
good.
No, but at this point, like, why? I as a play caller, now if you're 6-1, different.
Sure.
But at 3-4, I as a play
Can't
caller,
worry about it.
Yeah,
No.
what the hell? But yeah, I think if you want to get Grunkemeyer some easy throws early, get him into rhythm, build that confidence, let him use his legs, and that's the path. Ride Katron Allen, let Katron Allen do what he does.
What is going on with Singleton?
I think the biggest thing with Singleton is they've tried too hard to shoehole him into something he's not in this offense.
What is that?
They've tried too hard to make him that between the tackles bell cow kind of back, and that's not Nick Singleton. Nick Singleton is your 10 to 15 touches a game, get him the ball in space, let him use that elite quickness and speed to make big plays.
Is he more like it's like Allen is the Judkins and Singleton is the Henderson?
Yes, I think that's a very good comparison. And I think one thing we're hurt Singleton too is their freshman year in 2022 when they ran the ball at an extremely high level. You had Brenton Strange, who was kind of the key guy, getting that block at the second level. Brenton Strange is now starting for the Jaguars. 2023, they kind of struggled to find that guy. 2024, Tyler Warren, key point of attack at the second level. Singleton and Allen both have big seasons. We all know, Tyler Warren, a tight end's never going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, but they ever going to, it'd be Tyler Warren this year with what he's doing with the Colts. Now this year, again, they don't have that. They're really struggling at the point of attack at the second level blocking. And I think that hurts Singleton so much more than Allen, because Allen's the type of runner who can lower his shoulder, get those 5 yards, and live to fight another play. Singleton, that's not him. He hit that first, and a lot of times with Singleton, he's hit that first hole at the line of scrimmage, and then he's met immediately. It's not been like some past years. Get through that first hole, you win the point of attack at the second level, you're past the linebacker. At that point, if you can make a DB miss, look out. Even if you don't, you're probably still getting 9 or 10 yards. So I think that's been a big factor for Nick Singleton as well. Personally, I think you get Nick Singleton in the NFL, get him in a system where he's used properly. I think he's going to be a great weapon for an NFL team. I have no doubts about that. It wouldn't surprise me if Nick Singleton goes on to have a better NFL career than Katron Allen, still, as weird as that may sound, just because Singleton's so versatile in what he can do. But I do think it's been a combination of the offensive coaching staff not using him properly, and he's been far from the only player this year I feel like that's applied to, as well as not having that strong point of attack at the second level that has been so key for him in recent years. You don't have Brenton Strange anymore, as I said. You don't have Tyler Warren, and you've really struggled with that this year.
Any reason to believe that with the time off and with James Franklin not here, that we could see something different?
Yeah, that's one thing I've wondered about. How much of what we saw in offense was because of Franklin, like tinkering in the offense or whatever? Does him not being around anymore, does Andy Koldernicki really take the restrictor plates all the way off, however you want to put it? I don't know. I'm more intrigued with some of the younger guys we weren't seeing. All camp, we heard all about Kobe Howard, true freshman receiver from Florida, having a great camp, turning heads, big plays, all of this. And the regular season starts, he never plays. And Tyser Denmark, who was a redshirt freshman, did some nice things last year. Similar. Regular season starts, he never plays. Well, against Iowa, they didn't play a ton, but they both finally got in there when it wasn't garbage time. Kobe Howard's first touch of his college career is like an 18-yard gain. So I'm more curious to see some of the
playing in those first 3 games against crappy teams.
That's against Nevada. Kobe Howard played like 20 snaps, didn't touch the ball. Denmark across those 3 games had like 2 catches for 9 yards. I don't get it. especially because it's not like your receivers are so. It'd be different if your receivers were just, man, they're popping. We don't have
Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate.
Hey, wait your turn next year. You don't have that, right? So that's one thing I'll be curious to see if that continues to change more heavily.
Okay.
I think it will, especially with Kobe Howard, because I think Denmark was a guy who probably was always going to kind of get some run regardless. But also if you're Penn State, and I know for a lot of these coaches, they may not be in their minds because outside of Terry Smith and Jim Knowles, maybe Ty Howell, I think most of these guys probably aren't here next year.
Sure.
But they
got to get jobs.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, as long as you're employed by a place, until they're not your employer, that's still your employer, right?
Well, yeah, but if you're the coordinator of the team that upset undefeated Ohio State,
that you become much more.
Oh, absolutely.
Powerful. Especially a guy like Colter Nicky, who right now has probably zero value. But what I'm getting at too with that is these young guys. Yeah, a lot of you may not be here next year, but you need to operate as if you are. So you need to give these young guys a reason to want to stick around here for next year with a new coach, right? Especially if you are interim head coach Terry Smith, who I have no doubts whoever comes on as the head coach is going to, one of the first things you're going to do is offer Terry a spot on the roster or on the coaching staff. You want to try and keep these young guys engaged, keep them here next year, because if you're still here, you want to have the best roster you can, right? So I think that's a reason why you want to play the young guys. And Dylan and I talked about this too after the Iowa game. It's one of the things that makes these next few weeks so strange is most years when it's a lost year like this, hey, let's get the young guys out there. Let's get them experience, see what we have for next year. But you don't know in today's era how many of these guys are even going to be here next year. But still, at this point, I still would rather see the young guys, especially at receiver, where it's been so disappointing, right? Even on the defense,
why not?
Some of these younger defensive linemen, Yvonne.
Yeah, but you actually have less to lose by going for it and playing the young guys and giving them a chance.
Yes.
So I look at it that way where, hey, why not? Because we're trying to win a game. And how do I know that this guy is not more capable than some of the veterans that were paid to play here that have obviously underachieved?
Exactly. And then if you're those young guys and you get that opportunity, and this is where today's college football, where the motivation is so much different, you're playing for a payday from somebody. Right? Yep. If you're one of those young guys and you come out and you're balling out, no matter who your coach is, Pat Kraft's going to make you an offer to stick around for the new coach, right? And you probably committed to a coach, but I'm sure there's some things about Penn State other than your coach you've come to fall in love with over the course of your time here. So, you're going to be willing to at least listen for an offer to stick around. Or even if you're not going to be at Penn State, you're looking to get that offer in the port, and not even necessarily just a monetary offer. You're at Penn State. You don't want to be the kid who played at Penn State for 2 years and had to drop down to Virginia or drop down to Kentucky or JMU, right? You want to be the kid, hey, I was at Penn State, my head coach was fired, but then I surfaced at Michigan. I surfaced, at Florida, at a school that's on a similar tier, right? So not even just a monetary thing, just hey, I don't want to have to drop down from, I'm at a tier 1 school. I don't have to drop down to a tier 2 or a tier 3 school.
Well, it's like the NFL now, especially that's what they would always say. You hear the coaches saying it in the preseason. You hear the coaches saying it when you have a losing season is, reporters will ask questions like, oh, do you think you've lost the room? Will the players not respond? And what, the coach will say, hey, I tell these kids, whether you think you're going to be here, if you're a free agent, whatever, everybody's watching you.
Yeah.
Everybody around the league is watching you because
you're putting this on tape, and everyone's going to see that tape. You want to have good tape,
and that's now even more important in college football with the amount of money that's going out there and that's available. And so that's why, I'm going to go and I'm going to wind up being, I'm going to wind up getting recruited by another coach when the new staff comes in. Well, it's not just about that anymore. Now it's about, things aren't going all well, but I can still make money next year if I can show that I'm worth it. So when the coach gives me the opportunity to play, I'm going to play. And so I think that's, I can see, that's why I'm intrigued by this game. Look, I've seen every year we see it. We saw it a few weeks ago, and I know there were different circumstances, like when a Stanford beats a Florida State. When you get these big 20-point upset Oh, you just saw it a few weeks ago at UCLA.
Yep.
There are reasons why it happens. Now, these are a little bit more unusual because it's, a top-ranked team. But this is also a program, Penn State, that no matter what you want to say about how bad things have gone in 4 games, we just told you they lost 4 games by 13 points. They've not given up. They have not been terrible. They've been bad, with their expectations. But if they can, I think still a lot of this is motivation. I think a lot of this is are you confident that you can go out there and win this game? And that's why the bye intrigues me. And that's why I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you tell me what you think. I think in these next 2 games, if I had to pick one game, even though the Indiana game's at home, one game that I think Penn State can pull off the upset, I actually might pick Ohio State.
Yeah, I think I would too. Part of it also is we've seen Penn State, they always get up for Ohio State, right? I have seen some. I'll go back to James Franklin's first year when Ohio State won the national championship and Penn State had 54 scholarship kids and they took the eventual national champions in double overtime. They've always gotten up for Ohio State. This program has been built on that. Hey, they're the king of the mountain. You want to be the top of the Big Ten. That's the team you got to take down. So they always get up for the Buckeyes. They just always do. A lot of these kids, you came to Penn State for games like this, and I get Indiana's really damn good. Like if Indiana wins the national championship this year and Fernando Mendoza wins the Heisman, I'm not going to be the least bit surprised. But we're all human. Human nature, you get up for Ohio State a lot easier than get up for Indiana still.
And plus, it's a home game, and I feel this particular team would feel a little bit less pressure, a little bit more like, well, we're at home. We get off to like the slightest bad start, and the negativity is going to be in that building, and it's going to kill the kids' confidence. Whereas you can get off to a slow start at Ohio State, but you won't feel that because it's us against them. It's us against the world. We don't have our home crowd, which should be a positive. But as we know, hey, I know as a Jet fan, it could be a major negative. So sometimes it's better to be on the road when you're a dog.
And it almost might be easier to feed off the environment at Ohio Stadium too. If they start getting restless and we can shush them and that sort of thing,
you can feel
that might be easier to feed. Yeah, that might be easier to feed off of right now than in the zombie crowd that Beaver Stadium is going to have in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So, and another thing too with feeling like they're more likely to pull this, it's only 2 years. It's small sample size, obviously. But Kurt Cignetti has not only never lost a game he shouldn't, he kills teams. We've seen Ryan Day more than once slip up when his team shouldn't have. Right. And we've never seen Day. He's never been much of the step on the throat, step on the jugular kind of coach.
Or they would have beat Wisconsin like 60-3.
Yeah. And I think it's because a lot of ways Urban Meyer was never that way. Urban was always hey, I'm up by 4 scores. Let me get my starters out, load management, et cetera, et cetera. So Day's the same way. Cignetti's not that way. Okay. Also, I think if these games get sideways, really sideways, I'm talking like 50-10. That's much more likely to happen against Indiana than
I believe so. Yeah.
I also think, Ryan Day, based off things he has said. I mean, I said in this press conference this week, I don't know if you caught it. He said, "Hey, they're 3-4, but we know roster-wise, it's a top 10 roster in college football still."
Sure.
Like, he has a lot of respect for Penn State. I think that alone would keep him from running it up. But yeah, I'm with you. I think if they're going to pull off one of these two, it's more likely to be this Saturday. Again, they always get up for Ohio State. Like you mentioned, the crowd, it's going to be hostile, but it's not going to be hostility from your home crowd. And I think it's going to be easier to feed off of that crowd than the zombie crowd that we're going to see. I'm going to be very curious what that crowd looks like at Beaver Stadium.
Yeah, it could be, because more Indiana fans. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be weird to see. It's going to be something you haven't seen at Beaver Stadium in a long damn time.
Yeah.
But, and like you said, coming off the bye, you've had 2 weeks to focus solely on this game.
Yep.
Ethan Grunkemeyer, even kid from outside of Columbus. I'm sure he's a kid who always went to Ohio State offer, never got it. I'm sure this game's going to mean a lot to him. So yeah, I'm with you. I think if they're going to get one of these two, it's more likely to be this weekend. Not that I think they get either of them by any means.
Sure,
But
exactly.
I think if they're going to get one of them, I think it's this weekend.
Yeah, that's what we started this whole exercise off with, which was let's just try and come up with a reason how the formula to pull off the upset, or at the very least cover that monster spread, which again goes right into the line of what you were talking about, where Cignetti doesn't care. Let's just destroy this team. And I'm going to have your foot on the throat in the fourth quarter. It doesn't matter. Whereas Ohio State could get up by 24. All right, we know the game's over. We're not going to really go too far now. And then Penn State might be able to score one touchdown and cover. So I have more faith in that happening if you're just looking at the number with Ohio State than Indiana. But in general, I still also agree that if they're going to pull off an upset, that I still believe that this is their best chance to do it. So I'm not sure, like like you said, I'm not sure that's going to happen, but that's what we say just about every time when we talk about these types of big games. We don't really think it's going to happen, but they happen. So, because it's one of these things where if they were to pull off an upset like this, you'll look at it on Saturday afternoon in the post game and go, well, you'll be able, this is why I want to go over the reasons, because you'll be able to come back and say, well, remember, we talked about this, that, and the other thing, including how talented the team really is. And this is still a talented football team. Why should it be that crazy that they would beat Ohio State? Yeah, because really the one big difference, and I don't know what the line would be. I don't think it would be anywhere near 20, is Drew Aller not being there.
Yeah, I mean, if Drew Aller was playing, I think you probably shave at least 5 points off.
At least maybe 14, 14 and a half, something like that.
Somewhere in that 10 to 14 and a half range.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what you'd be looking at, because I'm with you. I mean, I think that, again, with Ethan Grunkemeyer, the poor kid, again, Kinnick at night, at the Horseshoe, number 2 Indiana, your first 3 starts. There's baptism by fire, and then there's whatever the hell that is.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I'm with you.
And it's also a 12 o'clock game, which I think will help them. Because a lot of times those 12 o'clock games, those are the ones where you can catch teams where it's still kind of the morning. It's like a morning game. And instead of, being pumped up, ready for the night game, they're antsy the whole game. The stadium's all rocking at night. You have a better chance, I think, of pulling off the upset at a 12 o'clock game at Ohio State than if the lights are on at 7:30.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think part of it, too, is that, I mean, I don't know how much you've seen this. I'm sure you've seen a lot of it. There's not one single school in the Big Ten who's complained more about big noon kickoff in Ohio State. So I know their fans are not.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because it's just that they hate the noon kick, and these games should. And I don't disagree. Some of these games that are at noon should be in primetime slot, but no one else has complained about it like they have. And I've always felt if any school had the right to complain about it, it's Penn State, because look how many times the game that would have been the whiteout winds up being at noon, right? So,
well, you have to have at least one big noon game on a year. I mean, come on.
But it's Ohio State. They think they're above the conference.
I guess that's true.
But no, I'm with you. I think the noon factor is a factor as well. Again, I'm not saying by any means they're going to win, because I certainly don't think they do.
We're not saying that at all.
But no. I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if they cover this spread, because again, they always get up for Ohio State. In the recipe for Penn State winning this game, you nailed it earlier. You said the way Michigan did it last year.
Yeah.
I mean, this is still a team that coming into the year you expected to be very strong in the trenches. They haven't been what you thought they'd be, but the talent, the ability's there. If you can put it together for one game in the trenches and you can get Katron Allen going, you can shorten this game, and even Grunkemeyer can make a couple plays, rather be with his arm, with his legs, whatever it may be. You can at least hang around and make Ohio State really have to sweat this thing out and earn it on Saturday.
Yep, that's the thing. You got to put the longer the game goes, where Ohio State hasn't a 2-score lead, the more the pressure starts to build.
Just look at the Michigan game last year.
Yes.
Ohio State led most of that game, but Michigan just kept hanging.
Wouldn't let them go away.
Hanging around, and then all it took was Michigan making 1 or 2 plays, and all of a sudden it was, even after that. I mean, I thought when Jack Sawyer had that interception down the goal line, I'm like, there it is. They're gonna pull it out, but no, it's just that's what you have to do in these games. You just have to hang around. I mean, You hear people say it all the time, and it's kind of cliche, but it's true. You just need to be there in the fourth quarter. Because if you can get to the fourth quarter and be within a score or, within a field goal, have a tie, especially if you happen to be in the lead, all the pressure's on Ohio State.
Yes.
All the pressure's on the heavy favorite at that point.
Yep.
Right? You're playing with house money. You kind of already are, but you really are at that point. If you can just hang around, get this to the fourth quarter, be within a score, and at least make them sweat this out, I think you feel pretty good. I mean, again, you're Penn State. You should never have moral victories, but if you can do that, I think as a fan base, you feel pretty content, all things considered, because I think, everyone has in the back of their mind, there was a game 2012, 2013. It was one of the early Urban years in the Bill O'Brien year where they went to Columbus. And I think the final score was like 73-14. It got sideways and fast. And I think, you have a fear of something like that in the back of your mind here.
Well, that motivates a player too. And that motivates those players to not want to be embarrassed like that.
Yes.
And that's another reason to make sure that you come to play so they don't even get close to being put into that situation. And remember too, even Howard, as great as a career as he had, he showed you that he did a little off, a little tense, a little pressure. This is a young quarterback saying,
yeah,
this is a quarterback that has not been in many of these situations. He was in one tough situation, and it was week 1, and yet he was not behind. He didn't have to make a play or anything like that, and he really didn't have a great game. It was his worst game statistically the entire season, because the rest of the games that Ohio State's played since week 1, he hasn't had to worry. This is what you see with these dominant teams, and why you can sometimes pull off these upsets is because they're not used to it. You get quarterbacks, especially young ones, that aren't used to being in pressure situations and aren't used to needing to come through, and they have to be the guy that has to make the play. They didn't have to do that all year. Or I had clean pockets most of the year. I didn't have to worry about guys in my face. I didn't get thrown to the ground 2 or 3 times in a row in back-to-back 3-and-out series. That's exactly how Penn State has to. That's what they have to do. I'd like to see that kid on the ground a couple of times early.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, again, like I said, if you're going to do this, you need the 9 Dennis Sutton, you need Zane Durant, Chaz Coleman, you need these defensive linemen, some of the younger guys, Xavier Gilliam, who've shown some good things this year, to come out and have their best game of the season, because it's going to start up front. And if you can cause some havoc with your defensive line, not allow them to run the ball, not allow Sane to get comfortable and be hitting Cornell Tate and Jeremiah Smith and any one of their other, I'm sure, 10 other 5-star receivers they have on the roster. If you can do that, that's step one. That's step one to how your path to victory. But and not even more than that, that's at least step one to not getting run off the field and embarrassed on Saturday.
And there are going to be a lot of scouts in that game. And, some of those players, Durant, they may not have had big seasons, but the fact is you're going to have scouts looking at you. I mean, show up, because if you don't show up, don't think that they're not going to, don't think you could just wait until after the season and go to the All-Star games. Everybody's going to forgive what you did during the games. That's not with the amount of money that just look at what happened to Sanders in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
He had a really nice, he didn't show that he couldn't handle playing college football. I mean, he was playing good college football, but so All-Star games don't really, there's a lot to it. And they really want to find out what kind of a player are you when the chips are down. This is as good as an opportunity for these scouts, these coaches, to know that if I'm going to invest on a high draft pick on these guys, how did they react when the chips were down? Because you know what? We're not a very good team. And if we draft this kid and we know we're going to have a 4 or 5 win season, is this kid going to give it his all? Is he going to be there for us? And if we don't think that's the case, then pass. And then maybe the next guy pass. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you find yourself a 3rd or 4th round draft pick.
No, I completely agree. I mean, one thing that made me think of is, with one quote, I'm going to go back. Neil Huntington, he used to be the general manager of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and you're going to laugh at the Pirates, but this when they made the playoffs 3 years in a row in the 2010s and had a winning record 5 out of 6 years. So back whenever they were last relevant. So it was a guy who knew what he was doing. He always just talked about minor league players, because if a guy was on a hot streak of AAA, a lot of times they wouldn't promote him because they wanted to see him fail and then succeed again then that's when they knew you were ready for the big leagues. That's when they knew you're ready for the big time. That's kind of where a lot of these guys are right now, right? They coming into this year, the last 3 years, these seniors, they won what, 11 games in the Rose Bowl,
Yeah.
10 games went to the Peach Bowl, 13 games and were literally a play away from the national championship game.
Yep.
They had never even faced adversity,
No.
let alone failed like this. This is the first time they've done this. So how do you respond? A lot of pro scouts, GMs, coaches, that is something they believe in. Hey, we want to see you get punched in the mouth. We want to see you struggle because that's going to happen at the professional level. How to respond to it? If you punch back, you respond back. Like you said, hey, this is a guy we want to invest a high draft pick in. If your response is just go through the motions and, walk through the rest of your season, you're not someone they're going to want on their draft board anymore. So I think that's a very valid point you made of, the scouts and that sort of thing. They're going to be watching this very closely to see how you respond to, for most all of these guys, first time in their college career getting punched in the mouth and facing adversity. Because, you can say what you want about their struggles against Ohio State. Penn State the last 3 years still was winning a hell of a lot of football games. And again, we're one play away from the national championship last year. These guys have not faced adversity before this year.
Well, we'll see how they come out on Saturday. And again, we're not expecting any miracles here, but it would be fun to see if they can hang in there and make this a second half game at the very least. Of course, if they cover the game, that means it's probably what it's going to be. But as long as Penn State gives their best effort, maybe we see something we haven't seen. That would be a lot of fun. And you guys, you and Dylan's okay for the post game, or is that also going to be an issue for him?
I think we can do later. We'll figure it out because I have we have our end of the season banquet for our third grade football team from 1 to 3 on Saturday anyway. So yeah,
what time is that?
1 to 3. So we'll probably be a little bit later in the day, regardless.
Okay,
but
we got the whole Saturday to figure it out.
Yeah, we'll get it out. We'll get it figured out this week and make sure we'll get it promoted for everybody out there, so what time to watch for us on Saturday.
Yeah, make sure to subscribe to the channel here at Proline TV. Just checking here. Yeah, the Minnesota game is 3:30. So it's possible that who knows? It's possible we're not on talking about the game until early on Saturday evening. Yeah. But either way, again, like Marty said, just subscribe to the channel. And as soon as we know what time it's going to be, we're going to put that together. And then you'll get the alert. That's the reason why you want to not only subscribe, hit the bell, the notification bell. You get an email that tells you when the show is going to be available on Saturday night. And if you do miss it, of course, live, you can check it out on demand. Anytime you like, and then the guys will be back hopefully again next week. And if not, if Dylan misses the week again during the week, then I'll be here to sit in with Marty, and then we might have to go through the whole idea of, hey, Marty, how's Penn State going to pull this upset off this week?
How are we going to take down Indiana this week?
Yeah. Well, anyway, that's next week. But don't forget to check in with us on the weekend for more Penn State coverage here on Proline TV. For Marty Leap, I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.